All right, let's dive into this whole human-centered design thing.
Yeah.
And by the end of this, you'll have like a practical toolkit to solve problems in a whole new way.
Yeah. You might be surprised at what this approach can unlock. We've seen it used to revamp clunky government websites.
Oh, wow.
Reimagine healthcare experiences, even inspire groundbreaking products.
So it's not just about making things, pretty or user-friendly.
Right.
There's more to it.
Way more.
Okay.
It's about digging deep to understand the people you're designing for.
Okay.
What makes them tick? What are their pain points? What are their aspirations? It's about putting yourself in their shoes and seeing the world through their eyes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But where do we even begin? Is there a specific process we should follow?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Human-centered design, or HCD, has a clear framework.
Okay.
Think of it as a roadmap that guides us through the entire process.
Lead the way. What's the first stop on this roadmap?
The first phase is all about discovery. Think of it as detective work. We're gathering clues, observing behaviors, asking probing questions.
Look.
All to understand the problem before we even think about solutions.
So it's about challenging our assumptions and being open to what we learn along the way.
Exactly. And sometimes the most valuable insights come from the most unexpected places.
This is already making me rethink how I approach problem solving.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in the discovery phase.
Right.
Where do we start?
Before you even think about talking to people, you have to frame your inquiry.
Okay.
What exactly are you trying to understand? What's the core problem you're trying to solve?
So it's about defining the scope of our investigation, right?
Precisely.
Okay.
This is where a how might we statement comes in handy.
Okay.
It's a simple question that helps focus your efforts and keeps you on track.
Can you give us an example?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's say you're trying to improve the experience of booking appointments at a busy clinic. Your how might we statement could be, how might we make booking appointments at the clinic easier and less stressful for patients?
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
It's a clear and concise way to define the challenge you're taking on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it helps guide your research efforts, making sure you're gathering information that's actually relevant to the problem at hand.
Okay, so we've framed our inquiry.
Right.
Now what's next?
Now it's time to assemble your dream team,
Okay.
but not in the usual sense.
Okay.
You need to find the right people to talk to,
Uh-huh.
people who can provide valuable insights into the problem you're trying to solve.
So we're talking about real users, people who actually experience the problem firsthand.
Precisely.
Okay.
They are your experts.
Got it.
Let's say you're trying to improve that clinic booking system we talked about.
Yeah.
You'd want to talk to patients' receptionists, maybe even doctors. Each perspective brings something valuable to the table.
It's like assembling a puzzle where each person holds a different piece.
And just like with any good puzzle, diversity is key.
Yeah.
The more diverse your group of participants, the richer and more insightful your findings will be.
So it's not just about finding people who are willing to talk. It's about finding the right people.
Exactly.
Okay.
You want people who represent different backgrounds, ages, experiences, the whole spectrum.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've framed our inquiry and we've found our people.
Right.
Now we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work right.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Before you jump into conversations, there are a few things you need to sort out to make sure your interviews are productive and insightful.
Okay, let's talk logistics.
Okay.
What are some practical things we need to consider?
First, think about the location.
Okay.
Where will you be conducting these interviews? It should be a comfortable space where people feel safe to open up and share their thoughts and feelings.
So maybe a quiet coffee shop.
Yeah.
Or even someone's home, if that feels comfortable.
Exactly. It's all about creating a welcoming and comfortable environment where people feel respected and heard.
Okay.
And of course, don't forget about the little things like having water on hand and making sure the space is free from distractions.
Got it.
Yeah.
So ambiance is key.
Right.
What about the actual interview itself? Do we need to have a strict list of questions?
Well, it's helpful to have some guiding questions.
Okay.
The most valuable insights often emerge when you allow the conversation to flow naturally.
So it's less about sticking to a script and more about actively listening,
Right.
being present in the moment, and asking follow-up questions that dig deeper into their responses.
Precisely.
Okay.
Remember, you're not just looking for facts and figures. You're trying to understand the emotions, motivations, and the underlying reasons behind their behaviors.
So what kind of questions should we be asking?
Focus on open-ended questions that encourage people to share their experiences in their own words.
Good.
Instead of asking yes or no questions, try starting with phrases like, "Tell me about a time when," or Can you describe what it's like to?
I see.
Yeah.
So it's about encouraging them to tell their stories and paint a picture with their words.
And don't be afraid to use the 5 whys technique.
5 whys. What's that?
It's a simple but powerful technique for getting to the root of a problem.
Okay.
When someone gives you an answer, ask why. 5 times in a row.
Hmm.
Each why digs a little deeper, helping you peel back the layers and uncover the underlying reasons behind their thoughts or feelings.
Wow, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking about how I can use that in my everyday life.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Now that we've covered the basics of planning the interview,
Okay.
let's talk about what to do during the interview itself.
Sounds good. What do we need to keep in mind when we're actually sitting down with our participants?
The most important thing is to be present and actively listen.
Okay.
Put away your phone, resist the urge to multitask, and truly focus on what the person is saying.
It's about treating each interview as a unique opportunity to learn something new.
Right.
Not just going through the motions or trying to confirm our existing assumptions.
Exactly.
Right.
And remember, even though you have some guiding questions,
Hmm.
don't be afraid to go off script if the conversation takes an interesting turn.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most valuable insights come from those unexpected detours.
It's all about being flexible and adaptable, letting the conversation flow naturally and following their lead.
And don't forget about body language.
Okay.
Pay attention to their nonverbal cues.
Mm.
Are they leaning in and making eye contact?
Uh-huh.
Or are they fidgeting and looking away?
Okay.
Those nonverbal cues can provide valuable insights into how they're feeling and whether they're truly engaged in the conversation.
It's like reading between the lines, picking up on those subtle signals that might not be expressed verbally.
Precisely.
Okay.
And finally, remember to respect their time.
Right.
If they seem tired or disengaged,
Yeah.
it's okay to wrap up the interview early. It's about creating a collaborative and respectful environment where they feel comfortable sharing openly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've conducted our interviews.
Right.
We've got pages and pages of notes,
Mm-hmm.
and we're probably feeling a little overwhelmed by all the information we've gathered.
Right.
What happens next?
Now comes the crucial step of synthesis.
Ah, the moment of truth.
Yes.
It's time to sift through all that raw data and extract those golden nuggets of insight. But it's more than just summarizing what people said, right?
Much more.
Okay.
Synthesis is about finding patterns, connecting the dots, and identifying the key themes that emerge from the research.
Okay.
Think of it like solving a giant jigsaw puzzle, where each interview is a piece that contributes to the bigger picture.
Okay. I'm starting to see how it all comes together.
Yeah.
But how do we actually go about synthesizing all of this information?
Yeah.
It sounds like a daunting task.
It can be, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Oh, well.
There are several methods you can use, and often it helps to combine different approaches.
Okay.
Let's explore those in more detail after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were wading through the sea of data gathered during the discovery phase. Remember, it's not just about collecting information.
Right.
It's about making sense of it.
Right. We were just about to uncover the secrets of this synthesis thing.
Yeah,
You mentioned different approaches we can use.
absolutely. One popular method is affinity diagramming or clustering.
Okay.
It's a visual way to organize your data and see the connections.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you write down key quotes, observations, or insights from your interviews on sticky notes,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start grouping them based on common themes or patterns.
So it's like those brainstorming sessions where you cover a whiteboard with sticky notes.
Yes.
And then you step back and suddenly, boom, you see the big picture.
Exactly.
Okay.
As you cluster the notes, you start to see those aha moments emerge, and the insights start to crystallize. It's really about connecting those dots and seeing the bigger picture.
That's so cool. What other methods can help us untangle this web of information?
Another powerful technique is called concept mapping.
Okay.
It's a visual way to represent the relationships between different concepts or ideas that emerged from your research.
Hmm.
Imagine drawing a web of interconnected ideas using lines, arrows, or different colors to illustrate those connections.
Okay.
It helps you see how different factors interact and influence each other.
So we're not just looking for individual insights, we're also exploring how they relate to each other and how they fit into the overall context of the problem.
Right. Okay.
It's about weaving together a tapestry of insights that tell a compelling story about the user's experience.
This is making me realize how much thought goes into understanding a problem from a human-centered perspective. It's not just about jumping to solutions. It's about truly understanding the nuances of the situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember the 5 whys technique we discussed earlier?
Yeah. That mindset of digging deeper is essential during synthesis too.
Okay.
We're not just looking for surface level insights.
Right.
We're searching for those root causes that drive the patterns we're seeing in the research.
So it's about going beyond the symptoms and identifying those underlying causes.
Exactly.
So,
If we can address those root causes, then we have a better chance of finding effective and sustainable solutions.
that makes sense.
It's like a detective piecing together clues to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
You have to look beyond the obvious and dig deeper to uncover the truth.
I'm starting to feel like a detective myself. Okay, so we've synthesized all this information.
Right.
We've identified the key insights and maybe even some root causes. What's next?
Yeah.
How do we actually translate those insights into actionable opportunities?
That's where we put on our opportunity lens.
Okay.
We take those insights and view them through a human-centered perspective. We ask ourselves, what are the real needs being expressed here? What are the gaps or pain points in the current system or experience? And most importantly, what opportunities exist to improve the situation?
So it's about moving from understanding to action.
Precisely.
We've gathered all this information.
Yeah.
Now we're looking for ways to make things better.
Remember, these opportunities are not the solutions themselves. They're
Yeah.
the stepping stones to those solutions.
Okay, I get it. Can you give us some concrete examples of what these opportunities might look like?
Let's go back to our clinic example.
Okay.
Through our research, we might discover that patients feel frustrated because they can't book appointments online.
Uh-huh.
They have to call during business hours, navigate a complicated phone system,
Right.
and often end up on hold for ages.
That sounds super frustrating.
Yeah.
What kind of opportunities could we identify from that insight?
One opportunity might be to develop an online booking system
Okay.
that would directly address the pain point of having to call and wait on hold.
That's a great example of an opportunity that directly tackles the problem. Are there other types of opportunities we should be looking for?
Definitely.
Okay.
Maybe our research also reveals that patients feel overwhelmed by the amount of paperwork they have to fill out before their appointment. That's another opportunity, streamlining the intake process,
Right.
maybe even digitizing some of those forms.
So we're looking for opportunities to make the entire experience smoother and less stressful for the patient.
Exactly.
Okay.
We might even uncover opportunities to improve communication between the clinic staff and the patients, like sending appointment reminders or providing clear instructions on how to prepare for a specific procedure.
It's like we're taking a magnifying glass to every aspect of the experience and looking for ways to make it better.
You got it.
Okay.
Remember, every insight can potentially lead to multiple opportunities for improvement.
Yeah.
The key is to keep those users front and center as you brainstorm.
This is all starting to make so much sense. So we've gathered our insights. We've brainstormed opportunities. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves. What now?
Now it's showtime.
Okay.
We need to communicate our findings effectively to the people who can actually implement those changes. This is where presenting your findings in a clear and compelling way becomes critical.
Okay, so we need to convince the decision makers, the folks holding the purse strings, that these opportunities are worth pursuing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of it like pitching a great idea.
Yeah.
You need to tell a compelling story, back it up with solid evidence, and inspire action.
So no boring PowerPoint slides filled with bullet points and jargon.
Definitely not.
Okay.
It's all about storytelling. You want to bring those insights to life. Help your audience connect with the human stories behind the research.
Right.
And show them why these opportunities matter.
So we might use powerful quotes from participants, maybe some visuals or even short videos to really drive home the point.
Exactly.
We need to engage their hearts as well as their minds.
Remember, the goal is to gain consensus and support for moving forward with those opportunities.
Okay.
You want your audience to walk away feeling inspired and motivated to take action?
So it's not just about presenting the data, it's about presenting the why behind the data.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And don't forget to tailor your message to your audience. Who are you talking to? What are their interests and priorities?
Yeah.
What's their level of understanding of the topic?
Right.
The more you understand your audience, the more effectively you can communicate your findings.
Okay, so we've presented our findings, we've rallied the troops, and we've got the green light to move forward with those exciting opportunities. What happens next?
That brings us to the next phase of the HCD process, the phase where ideas transform into tangible solutions.
But we'll have to save that exciting chapter for our next installment. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back, Deep Divers. We've journeyed through the discovery phase, unearthed insights, and pinpointed opportunities for improvement.
And now we stand on the precipice of transformation. It's time to translate those opportunities into tangible solutions.
It feels like we're about to enter a whole new realm.
Right.
Where do we even begin to create these solutions?
This is where the magic of design comes in.
Okay.
This phase is all about ideation, prototyping, and testing. Remember those opportunities we meticulously uncovered.
Yeah.
Now we brainstorm creative solutions that address them head-on.
So it's like a brainstorming session on steroids.
Yeah,
No idea is too wild or wacky at this point.
exactly.
Oh.
It's about quantity over quality.
Uh-huh.
The more ideas we generate, the better our chances of striking gold.
And I bet that diversity of thought is crucial here, just like it was during the discovery phase.
Absolutely. We want a melting pot of perspectives to fuel our brainstorming fire.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing together people with different backgrounds, skills, and experiences ensures we're exploring all angles
Yeah.
and considering solutions we might not have imagined on our own.
So we're all fired up, bursting with ideas.
Mhm.
How do we turn these ideas into something tangible, something we can actually test and refine?
That's where prototyping comes in.
Okay.
It's about creating quick and dirty representations of our ideas.
Hmm.
Think sketches, mock-ups, role-playing scenarios, even physical models cobbled together from everyday materials.
So we're not aiming for perfection at this stage.
Right.
It's more about experimentation and bringing ideas to life in a rough and ready form.
Precisely.
Okay.
The beauty of prototyping is that it allows for early and frequent feedback.
Hmm.
We can put these prototypes in front of users,
Yeah.
observe how they interact with them,
Okay.
and gather invaluable insights to guide our next iteration.
It sounds like a constant dance between creating and refining a continuous feedback loop.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is where the true power of HCD shines through. This iterative process ensures we're crafting solutions that genuinely meet the needs of our users.
I can see how this approach would lead to more user-friendly and effective solutions. Yeah. Okay, so we've prototyped and tested, refined and repeated. What's the next step in this creative journey?
We've reached the delivery phase, the culmination of all our hard work.
Yeah.
This is where those meticulously designed solutions are brought to life and launched into the real world.
It's like watching our baby bird take flight.
It is quite rewarding.
Yeah.
But remember, even after launch, the work doesn't stop. This is where our fourth phase measure takes center stage.
Right. We're constantly gathering, data tracking user interactions and seeking out those subtle clues that tell us how to further improve and refine our solutions.
It's about cultivating a culture of continuous improvement, always pushing ourselves to enhance the user experience.
So it's not a one and done deal.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and evolving.
Exactly. The world is constantly changing, and so are the needs of our users. Human-centered design equips us to navigate this dynamic landscape and create solutions that stand the test of time.
Well, fellow deep divers, we've reached the end of our expedition into the world of human-centered design. We've trekked through the discovery phase, scaled the heights of design, and witnessed the launch in the delivery phase. And we know that the journey doesn't end there. It continues with measuring and refining. Are we striving for a better user experience?
I hope this deep dive has equipped you with the knowledge and inspiration to approach problem-solving with a fresh perspective, keeping the human at the heart of it all.
Remember, the most impactful solutions often emerge from the simplest of insights. So keep your eyes open, your ears tuned, and your minds curious. You never know where that next brilliant idea will come from.
Until next time, keep diving deep.